Hi, and welcome to the history lessons in Wikipedia world. As you know, many times in history, the remains and the material objects of ancient civilizations only arrive to us because of some violent disaster. The normal thing is to discard the material, build over towns, and renew everything. Sometimes it's been, as we've said, natural disasters. Sometimes it's been wars. Wars leave us with broken weapons that no one will want to use. Dead soldiers that will give us the information on how they died. And in some cases, if the war or the natural disaster was so bad, the whole population might have abandoned the village and never gone back to that area. Even in the most unusual places, one of the most richest sources of Roman ceramic, for example, is actually a dump. We're talking about places and things that in other moments humans have abandoned, discarded, or forgotten about. And thanks to that, they come to now, to our days. They are conserved. The job of an archaeologist and a historian, I would like to mention, is to figure out as much as possible of a picture, for example, with only some pieces of the puzzle. Even when we have access to written records, we talk about incomplete images. So what you have to do is try and find as many pieces as possible in these places that have been conserved to our times, looking for remains in digs and in the written records. And then, try and figure out what the picture is. Sometimes it will be really clear. For example, this is a rabbit's ear, so it's obviously a rabbit. But other times you can only make a hypothesis. We can maybe see a part of an ear and a part of a tail, so it's probably a rabbit. But so you make theories, and then maybe another historian will find two other pieces of the puzzle. They'll check and rediscover that, it was a bird with strange feathers. This is how historians sadly have to work, finding pieces, and as many pieces as possible. But sometimes you get a jackpot and you can learn a lot about the whole civilization with just one dig. And it's one of the themes that we're going to talk about in the following lessons. We're going to learn about everyday life for Roman citizens thanks to a horrible tragedy where lots of people were killed. We're talking about an exceptional day in the history of Rome, August 24th, 79 AD, when a terrible natural disaster killed more than 2,000 people, but also created a time capsule that enclosed various Roman towns at their pinnacle. When this was open, historians were able to learn exceptional things and confirm much of what had been studied to that moment. We're talking about construction, art, food, clothing, tools, commerce, beliefs. It was all there, closed in these towns. We're going to use one of the biggest findings of all time to learn about Roman life. And you've heard about it. We're going to discover Pompeii. Pompeii was a large Roman town in the Italian region of the Campania that was destroyed and covered by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD. It was not the only town. It recorded that up to 5 towns were destroyed: Pompeii, Herculaneum, Stabiae, Oplontis, and Vila Boscoraeale, although it's mainly the first 2 that are better known, Pompeii and Herculaneum. And these are 2 of the ones going to really look into. The name of both towns actually comes from the legend of Hercules. It's believed that he fought the giants in this very spot. And from this myth comes the name Herculaneum that goes together with Pompeii. Pompeii is derived from Pompe, a commemorative procession that was made to honor and celebrate the victory over said giants. So it all has a relation to this mythical semigod. The area had been cherished because of its favorable climate and rich volcanic soil that enabled agriculture. Its prosperity was not only because of its climate and scenery, but because of the access to one of the most important ports of the bay. Many of the surrounding towns sent their goods to Pompeii that would later be shipped to the rest of the empire. We find olives, olive oil, wine, wool, fish sauce, salt, walnuts, figs, almonds, cherries, so many fruits and vegetables. Even we found spices, exotic fruits, clams, and the wild animals and slaves that went to Rome. They all came in through this immense port that was always flowing with different commodities that were coming in and out. Attracted by the richness of the region, its milder weather and its scenery, little by little the town of Pompeii transformed into a resort for vacationers with this natural scenery and great weather. Obviously, it was centered around Rome's most distinguished citizens. Those who were powerful and well off in Rome would be likely to acquire or build a house or villa in Pompeii. There they would spend the months in summer. Some things never change, right? The population was around 15,000, 1/3 of them slaves. This gives us the idea of how wealthy the people that lived there were if they needed so many slaves for their daily work. In contrast, Herculaneum and Stabiae had smaller populations and a larger number of working people. Let's remember that because the findings are quite different. Pompeii remains the most studied and excavated place with 3 square kilometers 1/3 still to be discovered, with densely populated suburbs. There's around 100 villas in the countryside. Others, like Herculaneum, still remain mostly untouched and ready to give us even more information. The difference between the digs, you'll think, why? Well, it's quite noticeable because of the degree of which the eruption and the volcanic debris affected them. Just see that Pompeii was buried by 4 meters of mostly volcanic debris. Herculaneum was buried in 20 to 25 meters of volcanic ash, and then the lava came over. So one wonders, how did they manage to find and access these forever lost towns? Well, this plaque that we find in Pompeii explains that as early as 1594, there was the architect Domenico Fontana that digged a canal that was meant to bring water from the river Sarno to a place where they were building weapons in the Tower of Annunziata. And during this construction, suddenly they found the ruins of Pompeii. They started digging and they found an ancient wall covered with paintings and inscriptions. And then they found frescoes, paintings on the walls. The first inscription that they found said Decurio Pompeii, that meant the town council of Pompeii. But nobody knew the reference by that time. It had been lost and forgotten for long. Another of the problems was that the frescoes that they discovered were covered again because they were considered distasteful for the era they were in. As early as Pompeii was rediscovered, the 16th century wasn't very open to this kind of art. And it did bring up quite a lot of controversy during the years that followed, because the Romans were more sexually open and explicit. They sometimes had depicting erotic scenes on frescoes over various places of the house, and they also found in Pompeii the brothels, and on the brothels they had obviously lots of erotic art, especially on the doors of the girls. So what they did in the first place was cover them and forget about it. So one of the big problems that had Pompeii at the start was that many discoveries were never promoted but just hidden or even modified with plaster. But they continued. In 1738 there was the discovery of Herculaneum, and they were found because they were constructing the palace of the King of Naples. So that various constructions able to find these ruins that everyone had forgotten. In 1748, finally, Pompeii was rediscovered by the engineer Roque Joaquin de Alcubierre. But remember, these times the archaeological digs aren't as professional, and we don't really have real digs and excavations until 1764, with cold weather that he started to analyze and study thoroughly what was being found. And you had to wait nearly 100 years in 1863 under the orders of Giuseppe Fiorelli, when one of the most unique techniques was found in Pompeii, the technique of the molds. Until now, archaeologists had found occasional hollow spaces in the layers of ash, and in these hollow spaces they found human remains. It was not until Fiorelli clicked that these spaces left in the debris were made by the decomposition of organic material, in this case bodies. At the moment they discovered this, that they saw that this made sense, they devised a technique in which they would inject plaster to keep the shapes of the bodies. Nowadays, I have to mention that it's been substituted by resin that allows further analysis and doesn't destroy the bones. But this first idea of injecting plaster into these holes made it possible, one of the most unique things of Pompeii, that we have the shape of the people. We not only have the people and this picture of their last moments, but they've also discovered food, bread, it's organic material, so it left a space, and we have an example of Roman bread. And also we have animals. This is one of the most famous, a dog that was chained. So this is just the start to give a basic idea. Now we're going to go deeper into the history and what happened on that terrible day of the eruption of Vesuvius, and how that has explained and given us so much information. I hope you enjoyed this, and see you in the next lesson.